soul, welcome to my channel. My name is Joanna. If this is your first time joining me, thank you so much for being here. I thoroughly enjoy having you here. My intention is to provide you with information that will hopefully ultimately help you help you experience more of yourself, essentially. So my duty, if you will, or my contract is to help us all understand ourselves better, because that's where our power is, that's where freedom lies. So if you are into wanting to feel more empowered, chances are this might be the place for you. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to share this with others. At the end of the day, my duty, if I can call it that, as Joanna, is to help Mother Earth with her ascension, and my job within that is to help the humans so that we help her. So even though I am working with humans and helping them raise their frequency, it's ultimately for the purpose of helping Mother Gaia raise her frequency, and you are part of that equation. So it is important for me to tell you that part of this ascension process, you are a big part of the ascension process. In other words, the ascension cannot happen without you, because ascension simply means attaining a certain level of consciousness. And when we humans become much more conscious, our entire lives are going to change. So when our humanity's consciousness changes, we change, because we are part of humanity's consciousness. When we change, we automatically create change in the world. And because we're wanting to create this different kind of a world, everybody wants a more peaceful world. That creation of that outcome starts from within each and every individual. So your responsibility always goes to you first, in terms of understanding who you are and how you work, or how you function, or how you create. Because without that, you believe that you are not a powerful creator, and you are a powerful creator. We all are. We just don't create mindfully. We don't create from the space of expanded mind. We create from a space of boxes and limitations. And to be more of who you want to be more of you, real you, the powerful you, we have to let go of these limitations. So my job essentially is to help you realize how you limit yourself, how I limit myself. And by how limiting ourselves, we limit our experiences in the world. We limit our experiences, which affects the rest of the world. So the more conscious we are as individuals, the more we are able to create from that space. That's a very powerful space to create from. So we are going through a process of essentially understanding, or learning to understand, who we really are beyond the physical body, beyond the structure that we have built throughout our lives, beyond our identity. And you are beginning to realize that you are more than your identity. Yet your identity is what defines you. In other words, the way you identify yourself is how you define your world. So the more limitations define you, the more limited experiences we create. Why on earth would we want to do that? Why would we want to create limited experiences? Most people don't want to be limited. People want to feel free to express. But why don't they? There's various reasons for it. There's many, many, many layers, and we are going through siphoning through these layers in order to help us understand who we really are. Who are we? Who am I? You're not your body. You're certainly not your mind, and the reason why you know that is because you can observe your mind. So if you can observe the mind, Who or what is the observer? That's you. The observer simply is consciousness. You are nothing more, nothing less than consciousness, and humanity is beginning to realize what consciousness really is. It's not a thing, it simply is. No beginning and no end. But humans try to define consciousness. It cannot be done. Consciousness cannot be defined. It cannot be fit in a box. So the way we humans understand consciousness is through concepts, right? And we have a variety of concepts that we adhere to. So the more limiting concepts we adhere to, the more limitations we will experience in our life. And again, no one wants to experience less. Most people want to experience more. I suspect you're the same. I, Joanna, am the same. I want to experience more of myself. And if I want to do that, I first have to understand, how am I participating in my current experience of holding myself back? What is my part of this creation? Why do I hold back? What's in it? What's in it for me when I hold myself back? It's that kind of level of understanding that many humans are seeking right now, one of them being you. You are seeking to understand yourself from the perspective of higher consciousness. And that's because the self is tied to an ego. And when we only live in from the ego perspective, we live life from a very limited perspective, because ego is limited by the very definition of being ego. Ego is limited. You, on the other hand, who is not the ego, are not defined by that. Your ego is. So the moment we realize that we are not our ego is the moment where our life can expand exponentially. But it takes time to realize that, and we are in a process of realizing that. And that's effectively called higher consciousness. We are about to have the lunar eclipse full moon on March 24th or 25th. And it felt like a really good time to bring information on what you might be releasing, what we might be releasing right now. Because full moons, and especially a lunar eclipse full moon, makes the full moon much more powerful. And the full moon is always about closing chapters, letting go. Okay? And this full moon is very amplified, it's very charged, which means a lot can be accomplished during this time. When I say a lot, in terms of energetically, a lot can be accomplished. Why? Because likely certain things will come up for you emotionally a lot of time in order for you to observe something you didn't realize you had, but that something is limiting you. So you're likely to experience some layers coming up into your awareness, into your consciousness, that tell you or remind you that you should live in fear. And those are all from the past. So you are likely going to feel triggered during this full moon. And to me, as Joanna, triggers are like gold nuggets, because they tell you the story. And story is what we live by. We live according to our own story. So because you want to be a more unlimited human being, you want to release yourself from your limitations. Our limitations are always from the quote-unquote past, not from the future. In other words, you acquired a limitation because of a certain experience, right? For example, if you feel that you are not good enough, that's a limitation. You assumed that you are not good enough because of some experiences that you've had that told you must not be good enough, and you accepted that as part of your identity. Does that mean you're not good enough? No. But that's the experience you had, and so you believe that that's the case. That's a limitation. That belief will absolutely limit you. Pardon me, it will not limit you. You will limit you. And right now, we're in the process of understanding how we limit ourselves. So be prepared to acknowledge some things about yourself that maybe you didn't know you had, but they're like these heavy burdens that are now coming up to be released. So during this full moon, one of the things that I do is I write out on a piece of paper any restrictions that I have about myself and the world, any beliefs, restricted beliefs, I write out on a piece of paper. And the way I word it is, I choose to let go of, and then I name whatever that is. And then I check with myself, am I really choosing to let it go? Because, we hold on to things for a reason, right? If I choose to let go of lack consciousness, then I better be ready to face the world in a different way, right? So writing out whatever you want to let go of, not get rid of. Please don't term it as I want to get rid of, or I want to erase, I want to get over. No, you don't get rid of, you don't erase, you don't go over anything. What you do is you transform. Okay? Otherwise, it's happening to you. No, you're in charge. So the way you verse a message will have a different impact depending on your intention. If your intention is to get rid of part of yourself, it's never going to happen. Don't even try it. Don't waste your time. You have to learn to integrate it. So by releasing a part of you to the universe and asking for something more or expanded to come in its place is really what you're doing. So you are letting go of the old, but you are automatically assuming that there is a new experience, and you're focusing on what would you like this experience to be. And then watch what's going to happen. You're going to have to face it. You're going to be faced with this new experience when all of a sudden, do I go back to what I've always done, or am I going to respond differently? And that's when magic happens. That's when you realize that you are having a conscious awareness of a trigger, and you are choosing to either deal with the trigger in the same old way, or you are using understanding of the trigger as a way of you proceeding forward, which may be different, which will give you different experiences. And this is how you change. This is how you know you've changed, because you are choosing to make a different conscious choice. It's conscious. That's how you know you've changed. Until you have an experience to show you otherwise, you're never going to know if you've changed or not. You might feel differently, but... So you might be pulled to some old ways of doing things, and this is your opportunity to realize, okay, I'm doing the same thing over and over again. Why am I doing this? It's a habit. It's as simple as that. It's a habit. Habit is born out of a necessity. So then examine the habit, understand, what is this habit fulfilling? What's the necessity? Deal with that. Okay. If you, for example, are someone who chooses to stay in a dysfunctional relationship because you believe that there is nothing out there that's better, or because you can't, or because you have some other limited belief, then you're just going to stay in a space where you are not feeling happy. Nobody wants that. But in order to not be that, you have to take a chance on something different. That requires courage. That requires you to say, I'm going to go out of my comfort zone. Otherwise, change cannot happen. Okay? At the same time, I'm hearing, go easier on yourself. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Some of you are very harsh. Perhaps it's, if you recognize that you are harsh about yourself, perhaps ask yourself this question: what is the purpose of me being so harsh on myself? How do I benefit from that? Ego will say, I don't. Of course you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. You're not going to invest yourself in doing something that means nothing to you. Of course, you have your reasons. It's what you've learned to do, but what does it serve ultimately? What does it serve? If you hold yourself back, and you know you hold yourself back, how is it serving you? Perhaps it's keeping you in a space where this is all you'll know. It's a habit. It's known. Do you want to stay somewhere just because it's a habit? No, and then if that's the case, then you have to understand the habit, understand the need, and create a different habit, right? If we are stuck in our place of smallness, I use that word a lot because it represents to me the opposite of being all that we can be. When we keep believing in our smallness, we're never going to create big things. That's never going to happen. Because we are going to be holding ourselves back. And right now, how you hold yourself back emotionally as well is going to be amplified and visible to you. And that's a good thing. If something is coming up in your life, you're like, oh my God, here we go again. Why is this happening again? It's an opportunity for you to realize that there is still something you're holding on to, and it's a good time for you to let it go. Okay? What you're letting go is not the experience. You cannot let go of the experience. Experience is yours. You have it. Boom, done. You're letting go of the story. You're letting go of the story that you are clinging into. And first you have to understand the story. And there's an emotion component to the story. So this is a huge time or huge opportunity to do some inner child shadow work, anything like that. This is what I do, listen, essentially for a living. And I for one, find that fascinating. Like the inner shadow work, child inner work, it's like, these layers. It's the equivalent of somebody just absolutely loving cake and eating cake 24/7. I could do that all day long. As a result of this change, of this awareness that we are now in the process of having, we realize we have choices and options that we didn't see before. So we are, and collectively, apparently we are letting go of a fear around desperation, not enough, lack, basically consciousness, right? Fear-based lack. So do yourself a favor, if you want, to release some of your pesky habits. First, understand your habits. See where you're coming from in terms of what is it feeding, what need is being met, and look at the underlying need. If you are, for example, overeating, as an example, understand why you are overeating, unless you have some kind of a physical condition, which of course that would be different. But if you are using food in order to numb your feelings, then we have to take a look at that. Then you're going to be often struggling with weight. So to let go of weight, for example, you have to let go of the emotional thing that you're trying to suppress or don't want to deal with. That's never going to help you long term. It's actually going to make things even worse. And whoever you are coming up to this space where we are choosing to no longer ignore things that we were hiding from. And that forces us to open our eyes to see things we didn't want to see. And then what happens is when we open our eyes and when we see, we realize there is so much more to the story. And it changes how we see things. It changes how we see life. So without further ado, thank you. March 30th, reminder for those of you who have the 2024 survival guides, all 12 signs. I'm holding a live Zoom group, meeting for you to come and ask your questions or your curiosity. You have received an email. If you haven't, send me an email to info@joannathehealer.com. Because if you are not on the list, then you're not going to get invited, and we will have 4 of those this year. So it's an opportunity for you to connect with me live and have a conversation. It's all part of your survival guides. Okay. So without further ado, let's move through each pile. Okay, pile 1. Let's see what emotion potentially you are releasing right now, or you will be addressing right now. What's in store for you? We have the word of secrecy. Is it as simple as you holding on to some secrets? Yes. However, what I am feeling more than anything is that you are feeling overburdened with other people's stuff. This is how I perceive it. And you're holding a lot of it in your gut area, in your solar plexus. You are likely someone who absorbs a lot of energy from other people, and you're like a sponge. Okay. Another message is needing to let something go emotionally that's not even yours. From what I can tell, whoever you are, you likely have learned at a very young age to absorb a lot of emotions. So you were born into this life as a extra sensitive. And this sensitivity, unfortunately, in some way shaped you, it gave you an identity. And what I'm talking about is that because you felt so much and you assumed a lot of those feelings as yours, you began to identify yourself with those feelings. And the word I'm getting is shame. Either feeling being ashamed of, someone being ashamed of. The idea of shame could also be sexuality, shame. There is some burden of shame that isn't even yours, and it belongs to your family. And I feel like I'm getting a suppression in my neck. Thank you. The connection is that if you hold any sort of shame within you about you, it's going to negatively impact your voice, okay? And number 44 to me is very significant in terms of creating new, strong foundations. So I could say that you are likely in the process of realizing some of the sensitivities that you have, and also food sensitivities. So some of you may actually experience an uptick in food sensitivities because your digestive system is controlled by your emotions, okay? Our emotions, yes, affect our organs, absolutely. So because you have a lot of emotional baggage in that area, it's going to affect you not only emotionally, but also physically as well, okay? And I feel like these feelings are bubbling and are wanting to move through you. So there is some idea of shame that you are holding on to. Maybe you're ashamed of yourself. Maybe you've done something and you were made to feel shame, and somehow you made it about you, not the action, but you made it about not the action, you made it about you. It made you feel something about you, and that became sort of your permanent thing. There are many people who hold shame within and they don't even know they have it. I, as Joanna, have had a lot of shame around religion. I wasn't conscious of it. It was a deep layer. But that shame, I was holding myself back through that shame. And when you are ashamed of yourself, what you are essentially saying is, I don't approve of me. And here's the question. If you don't approve of you, who does? Who approves or disapproves of you? Pile number one. That's a big question for you. That's actually a mammoth question. Who do you allow to shape your identity? Is it you, or is it something outside of you? If something outside of you shapes your identity and you identify with it, then you better make sure that the type of identity that you are absorbing is something you want. If you are looking at a picture in a magazine or now social media, and you're comparing yourself to a person who looks like they're not even real because they've been so airbrushed, that's not even human. And you're telling yourself that you look at the person and they look at yourself, and automatically you assume that you are less than the person you're looking at because of your comparison. It's like a drug. We do it so much it's like a drug. We do it without even knowing it. But every time you do that, you are disapproving of yourself. You are saying to yourself, I am not enough the way I am right now. You are in constant conflict. That's called pain. When you are at conflict with yourself, it causes a lot of internal pain. Now, we don't think about this pain. It's not something that we're conscious of, but it is a pain. It is a lower frequency vibration, and it will absolutely pull you down in terms of your ability to express yourself and your creativity. So who approves of you? Pile number one. The lesson here for you is to learn how to approve of yourself. It does not mean that you are not open to constructive criticism, but you don't automatically assume that criticism about you. You see it for what it is, which is somebody has feedback, but it does not mean that there is anything wrong with you. It doesn't have to come from the idea that something is wrong with you or you're less. No, it's got nothing to do with that. It's just someone saying, hey, you could improve on this. It's just the way we see and communicate with ourselves. So using this image example, Next time you look at an image and you have an unfavorable view towards yourself because of the picture you're looking at, just notice that that's what you're doing, and that's what you're communicating to yourself in that moment, and decide not to communicate that any longer. You can look at the picture and say, okay, well, that's interesting. I mean, I like how the person looks, but how they look doesn't define me. It can't, because if it does, you're defined by the outside, you're screwed. If you're defined by the outside, you're screwed. And that's because, A, you can't control the outside. The outside always changes. So your sense of identity is never really strong. You're always wavering. That's not what you want. You don't want to waver. You want to stand tall. It's like a tiny little tree that's very weak, and the wind blows and it just blows the tree. It's very unstable versus a solid oak tree. You want to stand tall because you can withstand any weather when you feel strong on the inside. But to feel that, you have to gather it from within you. It's there. It's there. You're just not in that energy. Remember, everything that you want is already within you. It's just a matter of you tapping into that frequency and make it your real. No, I'm not saying you're going to go grow physical wings, because you're not here to do that. You're here to be a human being. So let's just make it 3D real. This is about you looking at the concepts you hold about yourself and asking yourself the question, how do I let this concept either empower me or limit me? If it's something limited, decide not to do it. Decide you're not going to let outside define how you should feel about yourself. You define that. And then let the environment support you accordingly. Area of focus is solar plexus. How may this show up in your life? So, Knight of Swords, I am not a tarot reader. I perceive information from pictures. And what I'm going to say here, even though this is a sword card and this is mental, I'm going to say you either feel all over the place, or you might feel like you are all over the place in the next little while, because your thoughts are very disorganized right now. It's actually a really good place to be, because when there is disorganization, there is chaos. But every time we experience chaos is an opportunity to create something different, to put new forms and structures. So although you might feel mentally and emotionally very chaotic right now, it isn't significant of there's something being wrong. It's just what's happening right now. You are evolving. And the more you are evolving from the old you, the more you are separating yourself from all you know. And with that is component of safety and security. In other words, the more you detach yourself from your old past, the more you are becoming someone new. And because you haven't been there before, it can feel a little bit scary. Okay? Comfort yourself. There's many ways of comforting yourself, but don't necessarily comfort yourself with food, because many of you are used to stuffing your emotions. So whether it's food, alcohol, habits. And by the way, this is a beautiful time, powerful time to let go of certain habits. So if you have any pesky habits that are limiting your fullest expression, then write that on your list. Okay? Yes, this person is not very focused. So again, you're not feeling very focused right now. You're literally all over the place. It feels like a timing thing, to be honest with you, because oftentimes when we are in this space, sometimes things are revealed. I don't feel like there's any major lessons for you, although because they were talking about your perception and how you let others basically contribute to your identity, to how you feel. That is a big lesson. Learning how to approve of yourself is a big lesson. So I'm going to take it back. It is a big lesson for you, but it's not something that you're not going to overcome. In fact, the reason why it's showing up right now is because this is what you are here to overcome. Okay? Joy. So this is a beautiful message because it shows me that you are on a new path. And you're lighthearted about it, but you're bringing with you sustenance. So this is what I see, sustenance, okay? So emotionally, to me, you feel you are much freer. And I suspect this is presenting me a version of you that's down the road a little bit. Once you go through these energies, through these letting go, this is ultimately where I feel you will be in terms of how you feel. Lighthearted is the feeling I get. So how does this connect with approval or disapproval? When we feel disapproved of, that's a very heavy feeling. So it doesn't feel lighthearted. When we all of a sudden take our power back and realize that we are who we are because of what we believe, and then we realize that we are, for the most part, in charge and in control of who we are and what we do and how we express, then we become less worried and less preoccupied with other things. We just naturally begin to relax a little bit more. And that opens us up to new experiences. So you are in a process of welcoming new experiences, which is what the full moon is about, letting go of the old, creating room for the new. And you are building new foundations. You are taking risks. You're taking calculated risks. But overall, you are feeling much more charged or recharged. There's also a mountain that's shown to me, and he's moving away from it. And that is telling me that you have just overcome some pretty big obstacle. You have overcome it. You have moved past this obstacle. You know, in other words, whatever it was an obstacle is no longer your obstacle. And they're saying, it's like you had to climb a mountain. It was a lot of work, but now at least you know how to climb a mountain. You have that experience. And because you have that experience, the next mountain you face, you know how to climb it. It'll be less scary, less arduous, less difficult. It'll just, you'll just do what you need has to be done, and then you move on. So the way you deal with your challenges is going to likely change a lot, which makes sense, because when we are insecure and we're looking for validation from the outside, the way we approach our life is much different than when we are sure of ourselves. Still open, but when we are sure of ourselves, we welcome life with the open arms. We don't do this. So the level of openness within you is changing. And again, when we are restricted by our past, we are less open. When we let go of our past, we automatically open up. You're not letting go of the past, because there is no such thing. What you're letting go is the charge around the memory of an experience. You're letting go of an emotional charge. So like I was saying at the beginning, you are going to likely feel emotionally charged over the next few weeks. Okay? Take care of yourself as best as you can. Don't overeat. Don't overfeed yourself to numb the feelings. Just allow your emotions to pass through you. That's all you have to do. Just let your emotions pass through you. Which, if I'm being honest, I'm always honest, it's not always easy. Sometimes there's an energy that moves through us that feels very scary and very uncomfortable. And it's very hard to not try to resist it, but resist the urge to resist whatever you are feeling right now. Remember, feeling doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means that you might be working through some energies, and just you need to let those energies siphon out through you. Okay? Is there anything else? I also see new doors opening, potentially either in 7 months or around the month 7, July. And these doors are something that a lot of you have been waiting for. They're opportunities, or a opportunity. Some of you already see it approaching. Some of you, this is going to be something that just shows up, and it's going to be an opportunity, but you're not expecting it. So again, new moon coming up is representative of new beginnings. So me seeing opportunities for you being presented, it makes perfect sense to me. And these seem to be different opportunities. And this is going to be a test for you, how you meet these opportunities, because although there will be opportunities come with challenges. There's just no way around it. It's how you approach these opportunities, how you approach these challenges, and you're likely to approach it from a space of feeling full and charged versus empty and insecure. So what you're going through right now, emotionally speaking, whatever you're letting go of, is preparing you again foundations is preparing you for a new experience. But don't assume just because you're going to have a fabulous experience that you won't have challenges. Challenges will be part of your life, your entire life. With challenges, you understand yourself. You realize what you're made of. You realize your strengths. Without challenges, you wouldn't know your strengths. You just wouldn't. And you're here to just realize how powerful you are. So that's what I have for you, pile number 1. All right, let's see what we have for you, pile number 2, what you are likely to be facing over the next little while. Mental transformation. How appropriate. I'm looking at various components here. Obviously, mental transformation is saying that we, pile number 2, are going through a transformative process of the mind. You are literally changing your thinking. Okay? How we think is tied to what we believe. So not only are you changing how and what you are thinking, you are changing the underlying belief that was tied to your current thinking. So you are in a process of understanding yourself from the perspective of what you think and how you think and what is it attached to. Because whatever you are attached to is the story. Okay? Example. If part of your thought pattern is, I am not good enough, the not good enough thinking is going to affect everything you do. And you are going to approach it from an understanding within your space that you are not good enough. You're not going to tell that to yourself. Well, sometimes you might. But in actuality, for many of you, you will say, I am good enough. Look, I am good enough. Why is this happening? You might tell yourself 10,000 times a day if you don't own it. If your body doesn't register it with energy and frequency, then what you're doing is you're saying one thing, but you're believing something very different. And remember, this full moon lunar eclipse is about uprooting beliefs that are not helping you be all that you can be. Okay, so this is a very transformative process. It is not an easy process. And the reason why it's not easy is because every time we change our thinking, our environment changes. And it has to happen that way, because if you're a powerful creator, which you are, and you create predominantly with the mind, which you do, when you create something, for example, that doesn't serve you, you're creating it very powerfully. But why would you create something that doesn't serve you? Now, at the end of the day, everything serves you from a higher perspective. But for example, I think I gave this example in the last pile, but let's see, because it's appropriate here. If you don't assume responsibility for your happiness, you're going to assign that responsibility to other people. So you will effectively be relying on other people to make you happy. Here's the problem with that. Most people don't know how to be happy. So you looking to them to make you happy, not going to work very well, because they cannot give you something they don't have. Okay? Even if they could, you'd have to buy into it. Okay? So for example, if let's say there's a person who's in a relationship and they're relying on this other person to make them happy, and it doesn't matter what the other person does, the person is not happy. And that's because the person A's happiness cannot be fixed by a person B's happiness. A person B can enhance one's happiness or literally show what's not working. But the person B cannot give a person A happiness. That's not how it works, because happiness is a state of being. I cannot give you a state of being. That can never happen. I can't just make you be a certain way. You do it. I can influence you, yes, but you have to say yes to it. Okay? So at this time in your own human evolution, you are beginning to look at your patterns of your thoughts, your thought pattern, and you are beginning to realize that a lot of your thought pattern stems from the space of unsafety and insecurity. And when we vibe from that perspective, we are always going to be driven by our fear, because it's what we're trying to desperately not happen, not want. We don't want that, yet that's how we feel all the time. So going back to the example of person A wanting to be happy and they're with person B because they believe person B makes them happy and they're still unhappy. That happiness has to come from person A. So the person A has to ask themselves, what is going on inside of me that I am not happy? Because what you're not happy is with yourself. You are not happy with yourself. And you want someone to fix that for you. They can't. They can't. You're the one. You're the boss, baby. So, and if you're not happy with yourself, it's not a judgment. Like, we all have this. This is a normal human stuff. Pretty standard procedure. But if you're not happy with yourself, then you are essentially at war with yourself. And of course, I always say this, where there is war, there is relatively little peace. What you want is peace. When you're happy, you're peaceful. When you're peaceful, you're happy. Generally, those two things can go hand in hand. I can help you have a more joyful experience if you allow yourself to be part of the experience, but I can't make it be joyful for you. It doesn't work that way. And you are beginning to realize how powerful you are in terms of the magnitude of what you create as far as your experience. And you begin to realize that all those experiences are coming from you and through you. They're not happening to you. They're because of you. I'm not saying you are responsible for the war that happens on other part of the world. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. Let's talk in the context of a relationship. When you realize that you are powerfully the one creating an experience where you are not happy with yourself, and there's nothing or anyone that can change that but you. When you realize that you can change that, you realize that you can change your entire experience. But you're not changing the experience, you're changing what's happening inside of you. And then that part of you expresses an energy which becomes your experience. How can you be more happy with yourself? Identify first what makes you unhappy. Okay? If, for example, you are unhappy about your weight, and I'm just using that word because everybody understands it. If you are not happy about your weight, there's a few things you might want to look at. Number one, is it a medical condition? If it's a medical condition, then you have to have that addressed. If it's an emotional, psychological situation, which happens a lot, one of the things you might want to ask yourself, how did I get there? How is this weight serving me? Now, some people think they're overweight, but they feel that 10 pounds is being overweight. That is not an issue of overweight. That is a completely different issue. That is an issue of how persons see themselves. Perhaps it has to do with perfection, and that's generally fear-based. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that when you realize that you are a powerful creator and you create based on the relationship you have with yourself, and when you realize that to have an experience that's different in your life, it has to come from a different way of relating with yourself. And when you become aware that you are the one that is not only responsible for it, but it's your duty to take care of your relationship with you. And the stronger relationship you have with yourself, the stronger manifester you are to positive things. That's just the way it is. Because you're a very magnetic being. The more polarized you are within yourself, the less magnetic you are to powerful experiences. Because you're going to hold yourself back. Okay? I just heard the word, who owns me? That's a good question. Who owns you? Do you think someone owns you? O-W-N. If you believe that someone owns you, why do they own you? No one should own you. You can owe money to somebody, but no one should own you. If you feel like someone owns you, which means if someone owns you, you're at their mercy. It's kind of sort of like if someone owns you, then you don't have a lot of control. Why would someone own you? Now, I'm not talking about some crazy situations. I'm talking normal human stuff. If you feel controlled by someone, if you feel limited by someone, the question you want to ask yourself, how do I limit myself? Can someone limit you? Someone can tell you no, but you can go, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway. Or you could say, okay, it's you limit yourself. Can I limit you? I can be unkind. I wouldn't do it, but I can be unkind to you. I can be mean. I can be bitch. I can be nasty. You can still choose to look at me and go, okay, well, that's interesting, and have zero buy into it. Zero. On the other hand, if you're very insecure, you're going to take it to heart. You're going to make it mean something about you. How I come through to you is my problem. It's not your problem. Generally has nothing to do with you. So that's just an example. Look at the relationships in your life and identify yourself within that relationship and ask yourself, what role do I play in my relationship? Is it a support role? Is it a giving role? Is it a receiving role? Do it without judgment. If you are in a role that you are constantly responsible or you are constantly giving, although it's a beautiful role to have, but there seems to be an imbalance here, because if you're always giving, then you are likely not receiving. So the question is, why not? Do you have difficulty with receiving? Perhaps there's shame with your receiving. Perhaps you don't feel good enough to receive. Any limitation you have with regards to receiving, being on receiver's end, it's something that's likely going to come up for you, pile number 2. Okay? Now, we have the King of Cups, beautiful, and we have the Hermit. So to me, this symbolizes, well, the word I heard was victory. Okay? So you're feeling emotionally victorious. And you're taking charge of your emotional life. You are taking charge of your emotional life, and you are choosing to take care of your emotions. You are choosing to take care of your emotions. You are no longer ignoring your emotions. You're no longer being controlled by your emotions. You are no longer trapped by your emotions. You are no longer choosing to let your emotion define you. Okay? If you feel crappy about yourself, that doesn't mean that you're crap. I always say that. So you just feel that way. And you're learning the distinction. Just because you feel a certain way, it doesn't mean this is who you are. It's just you've learned to feel about yourself this way. A lot of how we feel about ourselves comes from patterns. It's just conditioned pattern of us feeling a certain way and then assuming that this is who we are. No. For example, there's no such thing as being not worthy. Not worthy of what? I talk about it all the time. No, you're part of consciousness itself. The idea of worth doesn't even come into play. It's ridiculous. The worthiness is a human construct. So if you feel unworthy, then that's your ego-based thinking and believing, and that is a limiting sets of beliefs. You might want to look at that, okay? The Hermit, is it Hermit? Yeah, the Hermit to me symbolizes someone who is all-knowing. But it's also someone who gathers information from shining light on things. Okay, so you are likely someone who is about to or is in the process of shining light on certain things for yourself. And you're not afraid to see what's going on inside you. It's like you're no longer afraid to see yourself. And because of that, it's like you gather a lot of wisdom. I always say wisdom doesn't just happen. Wisdom is knowledge experienced. So you are likely going through experiences right now that allow you to extract a lot of wisdom. You're gaining a lot of wisdom and knowledge right now. And You're likely doing this on your own, so you might be spending a lot of time on your own. You might be going within. There's a lot of, not isolation, but a lot of alone time, meditation. So it would be really good for you to adopt some sort of a ritual where every day, every night, every morning, you kind of check in with yourself. You check in with yourself. And that checking in is as important as you paying the next bill. And you know what happens when you don't pay a bill? You get cut off. You're not going to get cut off from yourself, but you're going to feel cut off. In other words, you have to maintain a healthy relationship with yourself. Okay? Learn to love yourself better. The whole idea of loving yourself, I still have a very difficult time with like loving myself. It's just it's so weird. But essentially, to love yourself means to accept yourself, to see yourself for who you are without judgment. Does that mean you cannot approve of things? No, you can't. But don't come into it from you're bad, you need to do this to be good. Because you saying to yourself, I'm a bad person is an identifier. Have you made stupid choices before? Yeah. Have you done some bad things? Yeah. But chances are you're not a bad person. And I'm only using that example because it's just to highlight the message. So you are effectively in a frequency upgrade, and you might have some ringing in your ears. Some of you may experience scratchy throats. So perhaps the energy is focusing on your throat, because I feel a lot of clearing in throat and ears. So you might actually, perhaps your intuitive healing is going to expand. Well, every time we shift in vibration, we automatically become more open to our natural psychic abilities. That's just the way it is, right? So it's a pretty cool time for you, pile number 2. Last but not least, throat. Be candid. Shows up to me in resistance. How do you squash your own voice? How do you limit yourself in terms of what you communicate, either to yourself or to others? When it comes to others, there's a likelihood of you holding yourself back in terms of speaking out, being vocal, being... it's not that you're dishonest, but you're not being completely honest because you don't want to ruffle somebody's feathers. If that's the case, then ask yourself, why? What's this feather thing? What are you trying to avoid? So you might have a tendency to hold yourself back with communication because you don't want something to happen. You've learned to suppress your voice in order to avoid something potentially uncomfortable or even scary. Perhaps you are afraid of being abandoned if you speak your truth. Okay, it happens. I know that very well personally. And a moment ago, I was talking about throat here, so you might want to get some healing oils for throat. Speaking. Maybe you need to yell into a pillow. It's very important for you to learn how to speak freely. Manage your communication, of course, but how to speak without fear. Here's what I do want to say, though. This doesn't mean that you get to say whatever you want, whenever you want, even though your speech is free. You still read the room and you still use your rational, logical discernment. Sometimes when you want to say something, it's best not to say it. So you have to be very diligent in reading the room and reading the situation. Okay? You might have a need to call someone an idiot. Perhaps in calling somebody an idiot would make a dent you don't want to make. Does that mean you don't think the person is an idiot? They very well may be, but you calling them is not going to do you any favors. Okay, so always read the situation. Is it important for me to say it, and what are the consequences potentially for me saying it? Because everything we do has consequences, right? If you're going to be kind to somebody, chances are they're going to be kind to you. If you're going to be unkind in terms of your expression, chances are you're going to be met with unkindness. That's just because the world is our image. Now, some people are just trained to be assholes, and doesn't matter how kind you are, they're going to be an asshole. You just kind of go, okay, sorry, not for me. Okay? Be candid. Just, in other words, be honest. Don't hold yourself back because you're afraid that if you say something, somebody's going to leave you or they're going to be uncomfortable. They may very well be uncomfortable, but if you're being honest and truthful and kind and compassionate, but they're uncomfortable, well, maybe they need to be uncomfortable. Maybe you need to be uncomfortable. You know, discomfort doesn't mean anything bad. Discomfort means there's something to, you know, perhaps you need to say something and somebody becomes uncomfortable. And with that discomfort, they realize they're doing something they never thought they did. And all of a sudden it's highlighted for them. And it's an opportunity for them to improve themselves. Okay? Does that make sense what I'm saying? I feel like I'm talking to somebody here. So I'm seeing also the number 5. Perhaps month of May is going to be important to you, or something from 5 months from now, which is luck. 5 months from now. April, May, June, July, August, September. Around September, it feels like there is a celebration happening. All right, pile number 2, that's what I have for you. All right, pile 3, let's see what you might be letting go of. Long-term goals. This doesn't mean that you are letting go of long-term goals. Okay. A lot of your goals, you're terming as success. So you have a goal, and to you that means success. It's important for you to identify your goals right now. And also, what does success really mean to you? Now, I mean, the obvious answer is success is happy family, maybe girlfriend, boyfriend, money, opulence. That's the obvious. But we know that there are many, many successful people on the outside that are absolutely miserable. So you might want to ask yourself the question, what does success mean to me in terms of how I vibrate? Because ultimately, I believe that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that resonance. You're looking for a feeling. Now, does a successful career give you a certain feeling? Yes, it can. But if you only rely on a certain success to give you that feeling, then you are, again, relying on something outside of you to make you feel the way you want to feel. That will never happen, ever. Ever, ever, ever. Will it help you to feel more confident? Yes. It can only help. It cannot be instead of you having confidence. Okay? Not only that. If you have goals you term as success, but there's a part of you that fears success, which means if it fears success, it's not going to ask for it. If there's a part of you that fears success, then you really want to understand the reason behind it. Now, here's the thing. Most people don't fear success. It's not the fear of success. It's what success represents to them. So if you have a goal that you define as success, but that idea of success has a negative emotional charge to it, it's going to be very difficult for you to experience that, because at the end of the day, it's actually not what you want. They're saying, give them an example. Here's an example. Let's say one of your successes is to have a lot of money. It's a great success to have. But you have an underlying conditioned belief that money is evil, money is bad, money controls people. When you have a lot of money, it automatically means you've done something wrong. What that means is your success is attached to and underlying negative emotional conditioning. And because that's the emotion you have around your idea of success, it's going to be highly unlikely for you to experience that success, because ultimately you don't want that. You don't want to experience evil. You don't want to experience being a bad person. You don't want to experience whatever. Anything that is negatively tied to your idea of success is going to drag that energy down, so that you have a very hard time experiencing that, because at the end of the day, it's not what you want. So you need to, in order for you to experience a lot of money, you have to shift your belief conditioning around money. If you continue believing that money is bad, you are going to push yourself away from it. If you somehow manage to bring a lot of money, you're going to be very irresponsible with money. You're going to just push money away. You're going to self-sabotage. It's pretty standard stuff. I'm sure you know about this, right? About how this works. Does that mean that you can never have a lot of money? Not at all. All it means is that your success relative to money is very tightly tied to your belief around money. My belief around money, not that long ago, was sheer confusion. When I first was asked by Spirit to do this exercise, and I tuned into the idea of money, and I was met with this confusion and a lot of angst, I realized, oh my God, of course I am keeping myself away from money, because I don't want to feel that. If I have a lot of money, I'm going to have a lot of confusion. I don't want confusion. Thank you very much. And then the voice said to me, what you feel about the money, the power you give it, is the power you, Joanna, give it. It is meaningless. You assign significance to it. Which means my thought about money was going to either help me experience more of it or help me experience less of it. When I had that awareness, it was like, wow, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And we have these connections with everything, including with success. So you might be in a space of redefining your goals, redefining what success means to you. Perhaps from now on, for you to successful person means someone who makes a difference in the world, feels good about how they're making a difference in the world, and they're generally content and happy with life, despite the challenges that you may have, because life is full of challenges. That may be your idea of success, in which case it's not tied into any specific thing. It's a state of awareness. And when you move into more of that state of awareness, you naturally will draw more to you, because you're vibrating in that frequency. Okay? So attachments, negative attachments based in old limited thinking and conditioning is likely, it would behoove you to cut cords with. Okay? You can find a lot of information on cord cutting, but basically cord cutting is you removing yourself or detaching yourself from old energy. So we can energetically do that and cut the cord, so to speak, but the habit still remains. Just because you cut the cord doesn't mean automatically you will stop having a habit. Habit is something that's conditioned. So you have to look at your habits. You need to put forth new habits, okay? 9 of Cups, beautiful, and 10 of Swords. Very positive cards. So 10 of Swords, to me, symbolizes 10 ending cycles, completing cycles. And for you, it's a mental cycle. And pile 2 actually had a lot of that energy, so you might want to check with pile 2. You are overcoming the need to control everything. Okay? We humans love to control. This is not about giving up control completely. Perhaps you have given up control. Not a good thing either. Well, there's no such thing as good and bad, but I'm just going to say not the best place to be. Okay? You want to be somewhere in the middle. But more than anything, You are relaxing around the whole idea of control. You feeling like you don't need to control so much. Now, the interesting thing is that in order for you to relax about the whole control thing, you have to feel emotionally healthy. Knight of Cups is one of the most auspicious cards in a tarot deck because it symbolizes emotional fulfillment. When we feel emotionally whole and plenty and bountiful and abundant, we naturally relax because we are not coming from a space of inadequacy or space of lack. We feel emotionally full. So this is an emotional fulfillment that leads to eventual letting go of trying to need and control everything. When we are emotionally fulfilled, when we're not constantly thinking and worrying. It's when we don't feel emotionally balanced, we get into thinking and worrying. So this is indicating to me that pile number 3, it would be really good for you to do some emotional clearing. Any negative emotions that you are still tied to in terms of your past experience that have contributed to you being someone who is maybe overly controlling or has some issues around controlling. By the way, the entire humanity has issues around controlling right now ever since the pandemic, because that was a huge control type energy. So having control issues come up for you wouldn't be that out of norm. It's a pretty standard thing I see these days. Okay. Also, learning how to control, but also what to control. Some of the things that we control or we try to control is really some things we cannot control. You cannot control what someone sees about you. You can only control how you show up. So worrying about how someone sees you, which is going to keep you up at night, it's far better to focus on how you see yourself. How do I see yourself? How do I see myself? How do I want to see myself? And then show up that way. If you want to see yourself as happy, show up happy. Now, if you're not happy and I say, hey, be happy, you'll want to punch me in the nose because you obviously have a reason of not being happy. So although happiness is a state of mind and can change very quickly, generally we're unhappy because there's some underlying condition. So if you are not a happy person, for example, with yourself, if you're not happy with yourself, you're going to be generally less happy, and it's going to affect your thinking. You're going to externalize your happiness because everyone wants to feel happy. Happiness is our birthright. Okay? So perhaps in order for you to be happy, you have to give up an idea you have about yourself that limits you, which is what makes you unhappy. When you limit yourself is you make yourself unhappy. Yourself doesn't want to be limited. That's its nature. It's to be. It's nature. It's not to control and hide. The more you hide yourself, the less people see you. And one of the things you have is about needing to be seen, desiring to be seen. That's all value. That's all validation stuff. I think I said that in pile number 2, but there is some challenge around validation, self-validation. Perhaps you need to be successful because that will somehow validate you. Well, why don't you validate yourself now and success will follow? Like success will naturally follow. Validating yourself doesn't mean ignore things that could be improved. It doesn't mean that. It just means notice what could be improved, work towards it. Be responsible for how you feel, and don't give people opportunity to make you feel bad. Don't listen to things that you negatively react to. Don't listen to gossip if that doesn't make you feel good, and it probably would be a good idea if it didn't feel good. Don't listen to negative media. It doesn't mean don't be aware. but don't fall into it. Don't fall into it like a trap. On the other hand, don't ignore your problems. Don't ignore things that you should be looking at, because that's called avoidance. Avoidance doesn't solve anything. So there's a balance here that's happening, which again makes logical sense to me. When we come from an emotionally filled space, we automatically begin to feel more balanced in our mind. It's helpful for our mind to become more balanced. So I don't know which one comes first, whether it's letting go of the control and that's how you become a little bit more emotionally stable, or you work with your emotions and that's going to help you with your levels of anxiety. There's something pretty good and pretty big happening here. Okay. Last but not least, only personal transformation. Again, pile number 2 talked about transformation. What does transformation mean? It means changing shape, changing shape. You are in the process of changing shape. You are in the process of you are in the process of remembering. Thank you. You're in the process of remembering. Okay. To remember is to be transformed. To remember is to be transformed. When you remember who you really are beyond the costume that you're wearing, your entire life experience can transform by you having that remembrance. Because that remembering reminds you that you are powerful. Yes, you have a physical body. With that comes certain conditions. Yes, you cannot have wings and fly, because that's generally not the condition of a human being. But beyond that, there is millions of different experiences that you can have when you begin to realize the truth of who you really are. And when you stop living based on conditioning, specifically when it comes to negative conditioning, limiting conditioning. So effectively, you are in a process of waking up, but that's literally what it is. Every time we look at aspects of ourselves and we realize, I am not that, I'm not that, I'm looking at it, but I'm not it, we transform. The proverbial chrysalis is coming into mind. You know, the larvae grows a pod around itself, and then eventually it has to completely liquefy. Like it literally gets transformed into liquid, apparently. And from that, eventually a butterfly reemerges. It's a total shift. It's a larvae and butterfly looks like completely different species, but they're not. They're just another version of the same creature. You are in that space right now. And going through these transformations can feel like being on a fast river raft. When you know those rivers, when you go really fast in the raft, I would be terrified of it. It's like, yeah, no control there, pretty much none, a little bit, but very little. It can feel like that, where you are in this stream and you're moving really fast and you feel like, oh my God, am I going to make through it? And it's like you're holding on really tight, but then you move past that space and you open up to this open, calm water. And all of a sudden it's quiet. The worst, quote unquote, is behind you. And now you can enjoy this new experience, but you have to first go through this tumultuous path, if you will, or part. Okay? It's all beautiful. It's all powerful. That's what I have for you, pile number 3. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know how this connects with you. Don't forget, on March 30th, live Zoom with me. If you received, if you have the zodiac signs, the 12 zodiac signs, 2024 survivor guides, that you would have received an email, and you will still get a couple reminder of emails. So we can chat on the 22nd on Zoom, and we can communicate, laugh, and have a conversation, or you can ask your questions. With that said, I hope you have a phenomenal full moon lunar eclipse, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Bye-bye. you.